Welcome to the very first episode of Unfiltered, real talk about the business of content creation. I'm Tony and I'm your host. On Unfiltered, I'm going to be featuring a really diverse lineup of content creators. Each one of them are at different stages of their journey, whether they're full-time hustlers, part-time creators, entrepreneurs who create content for their businesses, or creators who are just doing that side hustle thing. I'm going to be bringing you up close and personal conversations that dig deep into the questions that you've been dying to ask. And today, I am beyond excited to get into an in depth conversation with somebody who knows the ins and outs of this content creation game like no other. She's a powerhouse across multiple platforms, from YouTube to TikTok to Instagram and Pinterest. With over 15 years' experience under her belt, she's not just a content creator, she's a content creation OG. And guess what? She also happens to be my daughter, and she's the driving force behind her own digital empire. So grab your favorite drink, grab you a cup of coffee, a cup of tea, a glass of wine, settle in, and get ready for a real, raw, unfiltered conversation as we chat with the one and only Raven Elyse. Thank you so much for being my very first guest for my inaugural episode of this podcast. And today I just really wanted to have, like a really laid back conversation just between me and you about your journey to you actually becoming the CEO, so to speak, of your business empire in this arena of content creation on the internet. And I'm pretty sure most people watching are going to already know who you are, but just in case there's one or two people who run across this interview who don't know who you are, would you mind just giving us a brief intro and maybe a real quick overview of how you got into content creation, kind of leading up to how you got to where you are today?
Okay, so for anybody who doesn't know me, my name is Raven Elyse. I am a 30-year-old mother of an 8-year-old daughter named Zaya. I'm a full-time content creator. Right now, my niche is mostly around DIY, home decor, party planning, entertaining, a lot of creative, hands-on stuff like that. But I've dabbled in a lot of different topics throughout my content creation journey because I've been doing content creation for as long as I can remember, for like over 15 years now. I started doing it in high school just as something to do for fun. I've always been interested in all types of creative endeavors, including photography, videography, video editing, stuff like that. So it was always just something that I did as a hobby. And I started off posting blog posts on Tumblr. I was on MySpace, and then I started doing YouTube videos. I started off actually doing a lot of hair, beauty, fashion DIY type content. So more of like beauty guru vibes. And this was way back in 2008, 2009 when I first started my first YouTube channel. And at that point, it was not at all a money making, it wasn't a career goal because I didn't even know that it could be a career. It just really wasn't even like a thing back then. But slowly, I just started gaining a following through that. And by the time I was graduating college, I had built up enough of a following and started working with brands and started actually monetizing it to the point where I could make that my full-time job. And then I had my daughter in 2016. So my content kind of shifted from being the beauty, fashion stuff to doing like motherhood, lifestyle, a lot more vlogging. And then since then, I've shifted again to what I'm doing now, which is, like I said, the DIY, home decor, party planning type stuff.
So you said that you have been creating content since you were in high school. So in years, how many years is that you've actually been
Like
creating content?
15, 16 years of creating content. I always like to say I started doing it seriously full time after I graduated college, which was in 2015. So that's been what, 9 years since then,
Mm-hmm.
doing it like full time as a career. But I've been creating online content probably even in middle school. I was doing it.
Sure. So some of your OG subscribers will remember you making videos in your bedroom when you were in high school, doing
Yes.
those DIYs, doing bedroom tours. So, one question I have is that when you were in high school or middle school creating this content, did you ever think that it would turn into what it is now?
No, not at all, because I didn't even have other content creators to look up to in that way to even know that it was possible. It was such a new thing. Influencer marketing, content creation as a career, anything that you see now in the social media realm, it didn't really exist back then when I first started doing it. Social media was social media. It was platforms for you to be able to connect with your friends and your family and to kind of just share stuff like that. It wasn't a known thing that you could monetize it or turn it into a career. It just hadn't, the industry hadn't blossomed into what it is today quite yet. So I had no idea that it was even possible.
So, do you remember the first time you got paid for creating content?
I remember, well, I guess technically the first time that I got paid for creating content, that would be from my Google AdSense earnings from YouTube. Before I ever got any paid brand deals, it was just monetizing my actual YouTube channel when I finally got up to that point to be eligible for monetization, which they've changed the rules since then. I don't remember what it was back then, but you had to reach a certain amount of subscribers or views or something like that before you could be able to monetize. And I reached that point, turned on monetization, and I remember it was a $100 threshold for the payout. So it was exciting to even just earn $100, my first $100, just so I could get my first check. And I remember that. I don't remember exactly when it was, but I think that was in maybe my sophomore year of college.
Yeah. Well, things have changed. They have changed a lot on YouTube and in social media and in this business of content creation. And you have changed along with it. So you mentioned, you started off doing hair, makeup, DIYs, and you transitioned into doing motherhood content, and now you're in a whole new lane. So I wonder what inspired you to get into this pivot and to start creating content in the new direction about what you're making content about, home decor, entertaining, and basically,
It's
getting back
frozen.
to your roots of DIY.
It froze for a long time there. I didn't hear the majority of the
So
question.
you started out doing makeup, hair, DIYs, and then you transitioned into motherhood content. So what essentially inspired you to pivot and start creating content in this new direction of home decor, of entertaining, and basically getting back to your roots with DIY?
Yeah, I was gonna say for me, it's not really so much of a pivot into something new. It's more so like focusing in on something that has always been there. Because I've always done DIY projects. I did more fashion based, making my own shirt, dress, shorts. That was like some of my first videos that I put out was like fashion based DIYs. But even back then, I was doing like DIY bedroom makeover, doing little things in my college bedroom, my high school bedroom, even. So I've always been interested in that. I've always sprinkled in that type of content, but my content over the years has always just mirrored my genuine interests of that season. Whatever I've got going on genuinely in my life, that's what my content is going to be about. Whatever I'm the most interested in at that time. So obviously, when I had Zaya, I'm a brand new mom. The motherhood journey is the biggest thing in my life right now, so that's what I'm gonna make a lot of content about. But I have a lot of other interests too. I went to school for fashion design, so there was that time when I was really focusing in on fashion based content. I've always had an interest in makeup. There was a time where I was a lot more interested in makeup than I am now. And right now, with all the DIY party planning stuff, that's just like my current interest. It's always been there, but I've just been more interested in it recently, interested in kind of expanding with doing like bigger DIY projects, bigger parties, and so I try to keep my content genuine and organic in that way. So it's
Mm-hmm.
never really like a forced pivot.
Mm-hmm. So your personal life experiences and what's going on in your personal life strongly informs the content that you're making, right?
Yeah.
So, but then how do you manage to balance your personal life uh, with the demands of being a content creator? So, these next few questions I'm going to ask you, it's going to be all about balance, like balancing your life and balancing your privacy. But my first question is about how do you balance being someone who shares so much of what's going on in your life? How do you balance the demands of being a content creator with actually living your personal life?
Well, my what I want to say is I don't, because it is really hard and I don't think I've got it quite, figured out in the most balanced, healthy way. I don't ever feel like I have. It's one of those things that you do your best and it kind of comes in waves. I think something that's good for me right now is that I'm not doing as much just like daily vlogging, weekly vlogging, just recording my whole everyday life type content anymore as much as I was before, because that in particular can be really overwhelming and draining because you just feel like you're carrying around a camera all the time, like literally your whole life is content and you don't get a break from it. Versus now I'm more focused in on certain topics. So I'm kind of only focused on when I'm working on this DIY project or when I'm working on this party, and I'm not just filming everything else, which kind of helps me balance and get a break from it and be able to go off and live my life off camera when, it's not pertaining to my actual niche right now. So that's been kind of a nice break. But, I try to have balance when it comes to just like scheduling my work hours. I'm supposed to have working hours between pretty much 9 to 5 is kind of how I schedule my day with my team, but that doesn't always happen. I definitely go outside of those work hours quite a bit. Um, but it just is what it is. It's part of the hustle.
So you're saying that, you no longer, you did do this at one point, vlog, do daily vlogging or show just what's going on in your everyday life. And although you don't do that much of that kind of content anymore, still viewers end up getting glimpses into what's actually going on in your life. So how do you determine, again, or how do you balance what parts of your life you're sharing on camera and still maintain some level of privacy for yourself and your daughter?
Yeah, I mean, it's like I said, it's kind of like picking and choosing, and it also kind of comes in waves. Like there's been certain parts, certain times throughout my journey where I felt like, okay, I have something to share here with this area of my life. I feel like it's helpful or important, going to be valuable, going to be therapeutic for me to be able to share this, personal part of my life right now. But then later on, I may say, okay, well, that topic is closed right now. It's kind of like opening and closing different topics at different times so that they're not just all open at the same time, because that would be really overwhelming. So I just kind of pick and choose like what I feel comfortable sharing at any given time. And again, just try to like only have a few things that I'm being more open with at any given time. Right now, I feel like I'm definitely taking a step back from sharing so much with Zaya and focusing so much on things that involve her or related to kind of just motherhood and parenthood in general, which I know a lot of my viewers like to see that and they're still requesting it every day. Like, oh, we want to see more about your motherhood journey and more about stuff you're doing with Zaya. But for me right now, that's something I'm kind of taking a break from so that I can open up in another area and have like the bandwidth to do that.
Well, has there ever been any negative consequences of sharing more of your personal life, do you think?
There's negative consequences for every piece of content ever. It seems like there's always going to be someone who doesn't like it, doesn't agree with it, attacks you for it, or literally like I get negative comments on just like my DIY projects that I'm working on, which is not very personal at all, but someone's going to have something to say, and that's just part of putting yourself out there on social media. But especially when you are talking about things that are actually more personal and emotional and meaningful. Like, of course, if you get any sort of like backlash or negative feedback on those bigger topics, it's gonna hurt more and it's gonna affect you more. So during those times when I was opening up more about my journey with motherhood or mental health or these bigger personal topics, yes, there definitely was consequences. But I kind of look at it as, again, it comes with the territory, and I still feel like it's worth it to share for the value that I know that the rest of my audience gets from it. The positive feedback outweighs the negative feedback always. So
Yeah, that's crazy. It's crazy to me how people seem to get on the internet with the express goal of criticizing
yes.
or saying something negative. It still just blows my mind. I have been tempted to. I've been tempted in the past to say something, but I have never been able to bring myself to do that. And
Because it's embarrassing. Like I feel the same way. I Of course we all have opinions. We all sometimes see stuff that we don't agree with or we don't like, or we're just kind of like, I don't get it. You could think that to yourself. You could say it out loud to the person sitting next to you, but to type it and put your name on the comment and put that out there for the whole world to see that like you're a hater, that's embarrassing. And I think the shame and the embarrassment is what stops people like you and me from doing it. But some people just don't have that shame.
I don't have that filter. Well, having said that, so how do you handle? Because that's something that I think a lot of up and coming creators may want to know. How do you handle that negative feedback, trolls, uh, criticism? What's your best tips for
I
handling that?
mean, my best tips for handling it, if I were to say, do as I say, not as I always do, my best advice would be ignore it, delete, block, don't give it energy. Don't waste your time responding because that's all they want is your attention anyway. It's a typical thing when they tell you about like bullies at school. If you engage in it, that's what they want. They want that back and forth. So if you just ignore them, it's going to be boring for them and they're going to stop. And I think that is true on social media usually as well. And luckily now a lot of the platforms have increased their options for like anti-bullying protection, and like you can mute certain words. You have a lot more stuff you can do on the back end to prevent it in the first place and to like block out the negativity, which I definitely use all those features. You can mute words, you can restrict your comments, you can do all types of stuff, which really helps. um, but when you do still inevitably get those comments, like I said, probably the best thing to do is just ignore, delete, block. Like, don't give it any extra time. But there's another side of me that's like, but I'm a person too. I'm not a robot. I'm not a character in a TV show. I'm a real person. And if you feel like you can say something to me, well, I can say something to you too.
Yeah,
Just like if you were to walk up to me on the street and attack me, am I just going to sit there and take it? No. I'm
yeah,
going to tell you about yourself. You know what I mean? And sometimes like it kind of feels like this could be a learning example for the audience. You know what I mean? Like, no, it is not okay to say these things.
right.
And I'm going to tell you that in a public place so that everybody else can see that too.
Mm,
And I think sometimes that's fine. But you got to be careful with getting so wrapped up in it all the
right.
time because it can eat you alive.
One thing I noticed sometimes, and this was early on, I think, being the person who is all up in your content and looking at the comments, I don't see that much negativity nowadays, but, back when you were younger, probably was attracting a younger audience too.
Yeah.
A lot of times it would be almost looking like it's constructive criticism and asking a specific question, wanting clarification, but it was really a trap. And as you answer that, and they
Mm,
were like, "Aha, I got you. So why did you say this, this, and this?" And then you end up just tumbling down this hill towards
yeah.
hell.
That's the thing too. It's like sometimes you don't even realize you didn't think you were responding to a
Mm-mm.
hater. You didn't think you were giving your energy to the wrong place. You just thought, like you said, oh, this person was asking a question or they got it confused, so let me clarify. And then you realize, oh wait, this person is just trolling, and now I'm already too deep into it.
The absolute truth of the matter is engagement on YouTube and on Instagram and even on TikTok, whether there's people arguing and going back and forth or saying hateful comments, the algorithm doesn't see it that way. Algorithm just sees it as engagement, which helps. However,
Yeah.
it can set a tone for your other followers. Lots of followers read the comments, just they want to see what other people think about it.
There's like a bandwagoning thing that happens too, where I feel like if one person starts the negativity and other people, thumbs up the comment or join in on the thread, then it makes other people feel like, oh, well, they started it, so I can just kind of join in and slide in and add my 2 cents too. And it sort of like expands upon itself. But it can also work the opposite way. Like I noticed if my first wave of comments or like my top comment is really positive, then people seem to follow suit. Nobody wants to be the one hater out of the bunch because now you look dumb.
They feel stupid.
But you're gonna feel stupid because you're the odd one out. But if it's the other way around, then you feel like, ooh, you can hide within the hater crowd and be a hater too. And so it definitely works like that too.
Well, so many content creators I talk about, they are like, I'm scared because I'm scared of the negative feedback. What would you have to say about that?
I mean, what they gonna do? Fight you? Like it's not a real threat. It's an emotional threat, and I get that, and that's valid. Like the emotional effect that it has on you is real and can really affect you in a real way in your personal life. And I've experienced that. Especially if you do already deal with any outside stressors or mental health issues. Like you don't need that added layer of negativity in your life. Like I wouldn't wish that on anybody. But at the same time, like you gotta weigh the threat versus the reward. Like these people are keyboard warriors. They are most of the time, I mean, there's rare cases, but they're not actually going to attack you. They're not going to come to your house. You're not actually in danger or being threatened. It's just talking mess on the internet. So what do you really have to lose versus what can you gain from just saying, okay, I'm just going to do it anyway.
All right. Well, I want to move away from this talk. Let's talk about negativity and talk about creation and creativity. So can you give us an overview of, because here's the thing, this is what I tell content creators I'm in touch with all the time. We're your video ideas because you're going to be creating content week after week, month after month, hopefully year after year. You have to come up with a lot of ideas. So where are your ideas? What is your process from, give us I know because I do know the very involved process, but give us a bird's eye view of your content creation process from idea to posting.
It has changed a lot over the years. First of all, I'll say that you kind of have to find your groove and your rhythm with it. It's going to be different for everyone, and it also depends on your team. So a big part of my process now is I have a team who helps me with it. So it's not just me sitting down, writing down a bunch of random ideas, and then just going off and filming it. I have Zoe, my producer. I have you, obviously, who helps with everything. And then even now, I have my new hire, Sam, who's a production assistant. So we're kind of all involved in the content creation process. It starts with brainstorming. Of course, that's where you got to start. Just throwing out random ideas, maybe starting with a bigger idea that could be broken down into a bunch of smaller ideas. And for me, that's usually right now because of the niche that I'm focusing in on. It's based around like projects. What projects do I want to do around the house? What kind of parties are coming up? What kind of holidays are coming up? What can I do creatively that would make for good content? And how can I, like I said, break that up into smaller pieces of content too? And I'm thinking about YouTube videos, TikToks, Instagram posts, Pinterest posts, blog posts, all types of different ways to break it down. And then because I have a team now, it becomes a discussion with you guys. I'm bouncing off of you guys and trying to figure out best ways to actually create the content. And we now, it hasn't always been like this. It used to just be me writing things down literally in a journal by hand. But now we have ClickUp, which we use to organize everything. So we have all these different folders and spaces, everything listed out. You click through, you've got the details for this video, you got an outline. Some videos are actually very fully outlined, scene by scene, what we're going to be doing, what are the main beats of the video. And then even from there, diving deeper into it, we talk about thumbnails, title ideas, all that stuff gets pre-planned or at least brainstormed in advance, so I have an idea of what I'm doing. And our goal right now is to kind of like do it for uh, I would say 1 to 2 months worth at a time in advance, so I know what the next couple months are supposed to look like. We don't always nail it like that. Sometimes we have like gaps where it's like, oh, we're not really sure what to do here, or we don't like this idea, we got to switch it out. um, but yeah, it's a full blown, like, the way I run my business now is as a business. So it's like, it's not just fly by the seat of your pants. What do I feel like filming today? Maybe I'll do a vlog. It's not like that. It's like, this is a team meeting, weekly meetings, and it's all organized in ClickUp, and it's like mapped out for the next 2 months.
So you were saying, and I mentioned this in the intro, that you are on TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, now Pinterest, you have a blog, and you have a team. So you've gone beyond just being a YouTube content creator to being a multi-platform creator uh, with a team. Are there any specific, are there any challenges, or what are the challenges for a content creator who is trying to consistently produce on multiple different platforms?
The multitasking is the challenge because, at least in my experience, I have a certain, concept for a piece of content. Like I said, usually for me it's a DIY project, or it's a party, or it's a room makeover. So it's one thing that I'm working on, but I want to be able to share that project across all these different platforms. But each platform requires its own its own format of content. So you've got vertical short form, you've got horizontal long form, you've got this certain type of photo versus that certain type of photo. So it's like all these different um, types of content that you're trying to capture at the same time while you're doing one project. And especially for me, because I'm doing these projects, I can't like go back and redo it, like, oh, let me just do it now for YouTube and then I'll do it again for TikTok. There is no do it again. I can't have this whole party again. I have to do it all at the same time. So it's literally like multiple cameras going at the same time, having to have extra hands on deck, multiple people filming me for different platforms or taking pictures. So for me, that's been the biggest struggle, is just capturing all the different types of content at the same time to post on all the different platforms, let alone the next part, which is editing all of it and getting all of it posted in a timely manner, because it's all these, different separate posts that take time. And then the editing process of editing all those individual pieces of content, because each platform kind of requires its own way of editing as well. And so it's just a lot of work to try to do simultaneously, because I want, obviously, my content to come out in a timely manner. And sometimes things get missed, they don't get done. It's like, oh, we got the YouTube video done really well, but oop, what about the TikTok? Or, oh, we didn't get the photos for Pinterest. So it's just a lot to multitask.
And I suppose that's where the team comes in. Because
yes,
just a few short years ago, it was just you. And then it was just you and me. And
it would have been when it was just me, I was only doing really YouTube videos, maybe doing some Snapchat stories, and then posting whatever I felt like on Instagram here and there. But I wasn't really doing like Instagram content. I was more so using Instagram the way that just, you would use a personal Instagram page, selfie here, selfie there. Here's what I'm up to today. But I wasn't trying to spread my content across all these different platforms. And it was already a lot just for me to be editing my own YouTube videos and trying to keep up with that. I would spend hours and hours and hours. Like, I felt like I was always at my computer trying to just keep up with the YouTube video editing on my own. So it would have been impossible. I think it's pretty much impossible for one person to produce the amount of content that I currently produce on all these different platforms at the same time. If I was having to film and edit it by myself, it would be impossible. So that's like the biggest reason why I have my team how it is now.
Mm-hmm. So, team, I have more questions about the team because a lot of creators want to know, how do you know when it's time to add to your team or even just hire your first team member? How do you know to do that?
Well, I think it's just based off what I just said. Like once you have a goal set, but you literally don't have enough hours in a day to do it by yourself, obviously that's when you need extra hands on deck to be able to get it all done. Or if you find yourself sort of like what I said, like, oh, I did really well in this area, I got my YouTube video up, but now I'm kind of slacking on my TikTok content. You feel like you can only kind of do one of them well at any given moment. That's usually because like you just can't do it by yourself. You're going to need to hire extra people. And then also too, I would say it's based on your income too. You can't hire people if you can't afford to hire people, point blank. So you've got to look at your financial situation, how much income your platforms are really bringing in, if it makes financial sense to be able to afford to hire a team member. And the good thing about that is obviously, hopefully, the goal is when you expand your team, your income expands as well. Um, Obviously, that's not like an immediate guarantee, but that's always the goal.
Yeah, I think a lot of content creators are afraid to spend money. Hey, shit, I can remember you being afraid to even pay me $20 an hour because it's like, wait a minute, I got to give up part of my income. I'm keeping all
It's
of this
hard when you're not,
income. Yeah.
yeah. If you're like just barely at that point where you can afford to hire someone, it's hard because it's a risk. It's like I don't really have all this extra money to just throw around and give to somebody else. Like I kind of need it for myself. If you're in that position where you're like I need it, then it is a risk. But again, the goal is the growth overall, so you can start earning more.
Hmm. So you remember being hesitant to, because up to a certain point, I was contract, your virtual assistant was contract, and then you transitioned a little over a year ago to full-time employees. Was that scary for you, or did you feel comfortable with it? Uh, what were your thoughts and feelings around that?
I would say honestly for me, I wouldn't say it was scary to make that transition to having like full-time employees just because number one, I knew I needed it really bad. Like it was very obvious that it was like just necessary. Um, and I'm lucky enough that I'm in a financial position to be able to do that. You know, it's not so much of a stretch for me financially to where it feels like a huge risk to hire someone full time. It just kind of feels like it makes smart business sense for me. But that's what I'm saying about, for other creators, you've got to crunch the numbers. You got to really crunch the numbers and make sure that what you're doing makes financial sense because you definitely don't want to be spending all this money hiring on all these different people or full-time people if it's not equaling out for your bottom line.
Hmm. So I'm gonna get into some more business related questions, but first I want to circle back to the creativity part because we talked about your content ideation process, brainstorming, what you have to do in order to get a video from being inside of your head to actually being on the screen. But I'm sure sometimes you have creative blocks. So you have a creative block, but you got to get these videos up. What do you do to help with that?
Consult my team first of all, because the good news is it's not just me. We have multiple creative brains in the building who can help come up with ideas. So that's my biggest go-to right now. I mean, that's the whole point of having a team is to be able to get support from them. So that's my biggest thing. I guess beyond that, you see what other people are doing. You know what I mean? You got to gain inspo from somewhere. It's okay to take inspiration from other creators. And of course, just like put your own twist on it or give credit where credit is due. But there's a lot of creating going on in the world every single day. But you have to go out and
Mm-hmm.
look for it, So I spend a lot of time as a consumer of content so that I can get inspired.
So I'm guessing there are times when you have ideas for content creation, but you're not really sure how the audience is going to respond to it, or your regular viewers are going to respond to it. And so, how do you balance figuring out how to create content that you, or what is the balance between content that you just personally want to create versus content that your viewers want to see? I feel like you have some really good examples of that to talk about.
Well, so because I've done different topics throughout my journey, there's definitely been certain topics that stood out as crowd favorites more than others at any given time. A lot of my motherhood content with Zaya in it, Zaya's hair tutorials and stuff like that, the vlogs, weekly vlog types, really personal stuff about my life always seem to be like crowd favorites. But as I explained before, that's something that I'm kind of like dialing back on, taking a break from right now, not really wanting to focus in on that. I have other interests and other focus that I want to do. And I first of all just have to know, okay, I know this is not necessarily the crowd favorite topic. So there may be a little bit of a dip when I post this type of content. It's not going to get the same amount of views as this other type of content. And I have to be okay with that. And I'm really big on crunching the numbers and looking at the data and making sure that it makes business sense and financial sense. So knowing what I know about how this different type of content is going to perform, is that okay business wise, financially? And can I do that and still be successful with my business? To what extent can I do it? What's the balance there? I like to base everything off of data as much as I can. That's the easiest way to figure out, like, okay, well, there's these type of videos that I want to do that I'm more interested in. There's these type of videos that I know are going to perform and maybe bring in more income. Do the math on how much can you afford to lean one way or the other. That'll tell you right there, business wise. Now, personally, emotionally, you also, I think it's important to like love what you do, like what you do, and be proud of your content and not just be forcing yourself to create this like, content that's not genuine. And I think that that can hurt you too, because your followers are going to pick up on that. If you're doing stuff that you don't want to do, it's going to start showing through your content. It's going to start affecting the performance of your content. So I don't ever want to force myself to do that. So I try to like, follow my gut feeling in that sense. Like, this just doesn't feel authentic to me right now. So I just don't want to do that. I know it would probably get a lot of views, but it doesn't feel authentic to me. So I'm not going to. I'm going to lean more into something that does feel authentic. And sometimes I do have to take a hit from doing that. Like sometimes it doesn't perform as well and maybe I don't earn as much income off of it, but it makes me feel better personally, which is important too. You have to have that balance too.
So, you're mentioning, talking about how things have to feel authentic to your content, has to feel authentic. You have to feel good about it. And this is a good time to bring up a question that I was asked. What do you do when a brand reaches out to you and say it is an excellent contract? It's super good money. And but the product, the brand just doesn't align with your niche or with your brand to where you are right now. What do you do about that?
Well, I just recently had this experience with a brand where I actually had that feeling the first time they reached out. I went ahead and took the brand deal because sometimes I think on at first glance it may feel like it's not a good fit, but if you think outside the box and come up with a more creative concept, you can make it a better fit for your niche. It just may not be so like literal. Like some things, like if it's a good product and it's a brand that you trust, of course, like I never work with brands that I don't think are reputable or I don't like their product, but there are ways that you can creatively integrate different types of products that you wouldn't immediately think would work if you take some time to be more creative with how you're going to integrate it. So I had that thought like, I'm not sure if this really goes with my current niche, but then I thought about it more and I figured out a creative way to make it go. So that was fine. But then I kind of took it as like, well, that's like a one-off thing, special occasion. I don't want to do too much of that because it wasn't like the perfect match. They came back and wanted to do another video. And I'm like, Now, see, now I feel like it's a force because I made it work the first time, and I feel like that's fine. But I don't want to keep doing that over and over again because it is kind of a stretch. So I had to turn it down the second time, and you kind of just have to think of it as making space for the next opportunity that will be a better fit.
Yeah, not everybody.
And just manifest that there will be a replacement.
Yes. And I understand that
for it.
Basically. Out here on the internet, not everybody may be moving like that. I've noticed some big names and celebrities also promoting products, and I'm like, you can't be serious, really. But they, it's a check. And honestly, maybe it hasn't really hurt their brand. But like you say, it has to be something that you feel good about, that you feel that is in integrity with your values, right? Yeah. So speaking of brands, do you mind sharing, and it's okay if you don't, like what the structure is on for your income from all sources, like percentage wise, like what's your biggest income draw? Where's that from? What's your next biggest? Where's, how does that work out?
Yeah, well, so my biggest income, the biggest chunk of my income comes from brand deals, and that's been the case for the majority of for really my whole full-time content creation career. It didn't start off like that because I didn't have brand deals in the beginning. I was only just monetizing my videos, and that's all I was really getting. But once I started getting consistent brand deals, it quickly became the biggest part of my income. So that's definitely number one. In second place is the video monetization itself. So Google AdSense for my YouTube videos. I'm also monetizing my TikTok videos now, kind of in that same way. It's a much lower amount compared to YouTube, but that's there as well. And then the third smaller portion would be basically everything else. So you have like affiliate link income, you have what else? If I was selling a product or, that type of stuff, which I'm not currently doing, I don't typically do. I do have my party planning ebook coming out soon, which that'll go in that category. But I don't have usually and haven't had historically a lot in that category. So that's like the smallest.
So you mentioned your product, your party planning ebook. What inspired you to just get into something like that?
As far as coming out with a digital product, I've always wanted to have a product of some sort. And there's been a lot of suggestions from the audience, from my team, from my friends. Oh, you could sell this, you could do that, you could make your own this, you could make your own that. And it's a lot of good ideas, but it's a lot that goes on behind the scenes to produce a good product. And I care a lot about putting out something that I'm really proud of and passionate about and really like believe in. And so I've avoided coming out with all those other ideas because I'm like, if I'm going to do it, I want to do it right. But what is something that I can kind of start off with, something that I can be a little bit more confident with as like a starting point? And my friend / teammate, Taylor Lloyd, she was kind of the main person who kept mentioning to me about like a digital product. She's done digital products before. You also have done digital products, and you brought it up to me as well. And so from both of y'all's experience with doing digital products, I kind of was like, okay, I feel like this is a good starting product, something that I can like put my name on and put out there kind of as a just, dipping my toe into that world. And the party planning topic, which was just a no-brainer because that's such a big focus of my content right now and such a big interest of mine. And my thing is, if I'm coming out with a product, I want it to be actually helpful and valuable and kind of solving a problem for people. And my audience have been asking me so many questions about party planning. They want tips, tricks, and advice on what all goes into parties. So being able to put together something that's actually going to help them with that, I just felt like that was a no-brainer as far as like helping to solve that issue for my
Well, that's
audience.
exciting. And you guys, I will put a link in the description of this video where you can either purchase or get on the waiting list to purchase the party planning ebook. All right, so kind of winding into questions that I want to ask every single creator who is a guest on this podcast. One question is about growth. I know that there's ebbs and flows, and there are seasons to content creation. And can you think back to when you were in a season of not really seeing the growth you wanted, whether that was in views or subscribers or whatever? What big improvements or changes did you have to make in order to get that growth going again? If you can think about that.
A good example of that I can give is specifically with my Instagram. I mean, I've had that experience on every platform, but just as one example with my Instagram account, I was at a plateau for a long time where I just was not seeing growth on my Instagram. I wasn't gaining followers. I wasn't really gaining anything as far as engagement, and it just was kind of sitting there. The biggest change that I had to make was being more consistent in posting and changing the type of post that I was doing. You know, listening to the general tips of the platform. You know, if they're saying they're pushing reels instead of photo posts, then you need to be doing reels instead of photo posts. So I started doing that, which helped. But I had always been using my Instagram as kind of just I don't know, just post whatever I feel like posting. This is like really personal and just fly by the seat of your pants. Like there's no structure to it. I'm not really planning my content for Instagram the same way that I was planning it for YouTube or whatever. But I started trying to more so make my Instagram content match my other content that was actually planned out, and be like, oh, well, if I'm doing these DIY projects and stuff over here, then I need to bring that over to my Instagram. Why not? So actually posting, it's kind of like posting more of my real work on there, which was helpful because it was reels, which they're, you know, promoting reels. And then I was able to be a lot more consistent with what I'm posting because I'm doing all this content and all this work anyway on these other platforms. So I'm just bringing it over here. So having a focus in on the niche, posting the type of post that the platform says they want you to post, and posting consistently is what helped me. So now I am seeing growth on Instagram currently, and it's been like a noticeable change ever since I started doing that. And that's Instagram, but honestly, that's kind of for every platform. Every platform pretty much wants you to focus in on your content. Don't bounce all over the place with all these like random topics and start doing something and quit and start doing another topic. Like it's very confusing for the algorithm and for your followers. So focusing in, figuring out what your niche is, figuring out what best practices are for each platform. If they're saying like video versus photo or a certain length or a certain, you know, there's all these different tips and tricks that each platform kind of has. And you can easily find what those best practices are. The platforms are telling you because they're like, please, this is what we want you to do. It's not a secret. Each platform will literally list it out for you. This is how we want you to make your content. Following that, and then being consistent, posting regularly, posting often and regularly.
I was just going to ask you that because breaks. That word consistency is thrown about. Consistent. I'm not consistent. Well, I could be more consistent. I used to be consistent, but I wasn't. It's like, well, what does that mean? What you just said.
That means you have it means you post often and you post regularly. Like you have to post a lot. You have to post, you know, pretty much I mean, I wouldn't say on YouTube, but like for TikTok or Instagram, that's once a day is pretty much what what would work. Posting once a day or at least 5 times a week. For YouTube, I do once a week. But if you're doing, you know, once on Monday, 2 weeks go by, you haven't posted, but then you did 3 in a row, but then another week went by, and then it's just like your schedule is all over the place. Like that's not going to work. It has to have like a rhythm to it, and it needs to be pretty often. You have to be putting out a lot of content.
Yeah.
To be successful as a content creator, because that's the whole point.
That's literally your job.
To put out content.
That is literally your
So you're
job.
not going to get anywhere from putting out a few little pieces here and there. Like,
Uh, Right.
quantity
And then you
matters.
said, like
Quality matters, but
quality
quantity
too.
also
But
matters.
you were saying on Instagram, you were just like posting whatever, it was just fun, whatever I feel like posting. I think a lot of creators struggle with that because what I hear from them is like, but I have so many interests, but I like fashion, but I love makeup, but I don't just want to be stuck doing DIYs or talking about acne or hair loss, but I like so many things.
Mm-hmm. I mean, one way around it that I have seen certain people be successful with is to create separate pages for separate topics. You could try that. Because I do think that like that's true. If you have more than one thing to share with the world, you shouldn't have to choose. There is a way that you can talk about multiple topics, but you have to be strategic about it. Like I said, just posting random things, jumping back and forth on one account, that's probably not really going to work. Or you have to be creative with the way that you link interests together. You know, maybe there's a way that you can take two separate interests and find a common link and make
Mm-hmm.
it make sense together on one platform. But again, that takes some thought and some strategy. And then there's times where you can be more of a social media personality, where it's not so much about the topics, it's about you. You know, people follow you for you and your personality because they think you're interesting, they think you're funny, they think whatever. And so you can kind of just be doing what you're doing because it doesn't matter what you're doing, it's about you. But that is not, you can't really control if you're able to do that or not, if you're able to be successful with that or not. That's very like the audience has the control. The audience has to choose
Mm-hmm.
you to become that type of
Mm-hmm.
influencer, if that makes sense. I think of creators like Monet McMichael, for example. She's a personality creator. She's not a beauty guru. She's not a fashion expert. She's not, there's no specific topic that you really like nail her to. She is Monet, and Monet can do makeup and she can do fashion and she can do travel and she can do, oh, I moved into my new house, home decor. She can, yeah, I feel like Monet can dabble in different topics because she's more of that personality creator. You know, people are watching for her and her personality and to kind of like follow her journey. And that was the case for me for a long time too, I feel. Like I was able to build up my following of people who were just kind of following me and my life and whatever I might be up to or into in that moment. So that can sometimes work, but it's harder to strategize and guarantee. So you're probably better off, especially if you're just
Mm-hmm.
starting off, finding a focus and
Mm-hmm.
finding a
Yeah, I
niche.
think it's hard to become a personality if nobody knows who you are. And, it can happen
Yeah.
right off the bat. It's like, oh, we like her. She's the it girl. But it doesn't happen that often. Um, so,
Yeah.
what advice would you give somebody who is just starting out in content creation?
What I just said. You need to find a focus, find a niche, find a topic that you are interested in enough, knowledgeable enough about. Like, again, what we talked about, you are going to have to put out a lot of pieces of content. So whatever kind of topic or niche you're thinking of doing, are you going to be able to come up with enough ideas to be able to consistently put out so many pieces of content on that topic? um, a lot of things just kind of sound cute and look cute to do, like, oh, I see the other girls doing makeup, so I guess I'll do makeup. But can you really do makeup to that level where you're going to be able to pump out the content? Or is there maybe a different random topic that you would be more equipped to share? Like, you don't have to just do what everybody else is doing. It doesn't have to be beauty, makeup, hair, fashion, lifestyle, whatever that means. It's like you can make content about literally anything. There is an audience for everything. I come across so many niche random topics, especially on TikTok. And I guess that would be my other advice. I tell my friends all the time, like, who are trying to kind of get more into content creation, like, post on TikTok. Short form content is where it's at right now. It's a lot more discoverable. The way those algorithms work and just kind of show you to people, and I think it really helps you with discoverability and getting your name out there, especially if you're starting from scratch. I think it's harder to start with long form content. Like, if you're just doing YouTube videos and you're starting from scratch as a creator, I think it's going to be really hard for people to discover you. But I would definitely do Instagram Reels and TikToks and make discoverable content, which means like these are things that people are searching for. And so when they search into the search bar, maybe your video will pop up to answer whatever question or thing that they're looking for, and that's how they're going to discover you. But if you're just doing like, hey guys, spend the day with me, here's me in my life, no one's searching random girl in Kansas life vlog. How are they going to find you? Why would they ever find you off of that? You have to do something that people are actually searching for, which comes into niching down and making discoverable content.
And I'll just add that discoverable content doesn't just mean that people will search and find you. Discoverable means that there are people who are interested. Even if they're not, that particular person is not searching right now, there's somebody who at one time has searched for, or who in the future might search for, this specific type of content. Therefore, that there's an interest. So maybe you have an obscure niche that you're thinking about posting in, but you type it in the search bar and nothing comes up. And it's probably because nobody's interested in that, or very little comes up. And I can...
Yeah, you have to be realistic about your audience, total audience size. Like for me, that's what I was talking about before. I know that my motherhood content and stuff, it got a lot of views because like there's so many mothers in the world. There's a huge audience, there's a huge population of people that exist that are mothers that need help when it comes to parenting and stuff like that. There's so many people who are searching for that type of thing versus right now, if I'm throwing an over the top party and I'm making content about, making these party props, there's not as many people in the world, just period. There's not as many people in the world who are doing that or who are interested in that or who need that type of information. Millions of mothers across the world need motherhood information. How many people need party planning prop information, compared to that? So I already know going into it that I'm talking to a smaller pool of people. And so you got to kind of be thinking about that and be realistic about that going into it.
Right. So that was your tip for those that are just starting out. I'm going to put a little twist on it right now and ask you, what would your number one tip be for aspiring content creators who they're not just starting out, but they're looking to level up and grow their audience and get make a little bit more money? What would your number one tip be for those creators?
That's kind of hard because honestly, I think it's kind of the same thing because like no tea, no shade, but I've seen current creators who are not new, who've been doing it, but they need that same advice as far as like they're not being consistent. They haven't niched down. They're all over the place with their topics. They're just doing like random vlogs. I don't know why anybody would be searching for this. You know what I mean? They're not doing discoverable content. It's all those same things because even people who've been doing this make those same mistakes. And get kind of like, I think it's also easy to get kind of like complacent or used to what maybe when you first started out there was something that was working and it kind of worked and it got you up to where you are today, but then it kind of like plateaued and it's not working anymore, but they're just still doing that same formula. It's like you got to switch it up. You got to look into what's not working and why, and how can you problem solve that. But usually it probably comes down to those key points of consistency, discoverability, your niche.
Well, I'm going to backtrack a little bit and talk about the vlogging your life situation, because a lot of the creators that come to me want to know how I can help them become successful doing just that. And they are not OG YouTubers. They are fairly new to the platform. And so I feel like they get a little bit disappointed when I tell them that that's not the road to success. What are your thoughts on that?
I would agree that for YouTube specifically, just vlogging your life is going to be really hard to gain a following off of that because nobody knows who you are if you're just starting. Nobody knows who you are or what your life is about. They're not typing it into the search bar. You're not popping up. So it's like, how will they ever come across you? It's just not, that's
Yeah.
lifestyle vlogs are not very discoverable unless you can make it discoverable by saying like, is there key points that you can pull out from your life or from what you did that day that is discoverable that somebody
I
would be
have 10
searching for?
kids. I
Like,
live in
oh,
a van. I have a pet snake.
well, discoverable. I think it's two different. So what you're saying is like sensational. Those are like sensational, very interesting things that would grasp a
Okay,
random
you're
person's
right.
attention. They don't even know who you
They
are,
want to
but
know
now
who
they
you
want
are.
to know who you are because you have 10 kids, you live in it, whatever. Like if you got something crazy like that, then yeah, you could probably get some traction. But if you don't have something crazy sensational going on and you're just like a normal person, which is fine, then it's more discoverable as far as like helpful things that people are searching for. So maybe, oh, best restaurant
Hmm.
in
Hmm.
Austin vlog. Like in this vlog, I went to try this new restaurant. So putting that in your title, like
Right,
best restaurant in Austin, because people are
right.
going to be searching for what are the best restaurants in Austin. So like that type of like strategy with like your
Hmm.
titling and stuff, I think could help on YouTube. But it can't just be, oh, spend the day with me and my
Well, I do
boyfriend.
understand.
How's
I
anybody going to find
understand
that?
how they can kind of want to start off in that direction. Then imagine you're on YouTube, you're watching videos, you come across very successful YouTube creators, the girlies that came up with you and Aaliyah's Face, and some others that are just, hey, they noticed back when you were doing it. She's just sharing her life. I have a life. I can do that. But what they don't understand is that's not how you came on the scene. That's not how Aaliyah came on the scene.
Yeah.
That it was about
We
specific
got
thing.
our following. Yeah, we didn't get our following from the vlogs. We gained a following from our other content that was discoverable. I was doing, my first viral video was DIY, how to make a DIY Chanel logo shirt, or how to DIY a t-shirt into a dress, or how to do these denim shorts or whatever. That's where I was getting views and followers and stuff from that discoverable type stuff that people was actually searching for. I didn't get discovered off of spend the day with me vlog, million views, million subscribers. That's not where it came from. I was able to start doing that type of content after people already discovered me from the other type of content. Now I have a following who I can then post these vlogs to. They know who I am. They're interested in my life. So now they're going
Right.
to watch my vlogs. But just starting off with that is not usually going to work, except it's
Okay.
different on TikTok. So this is
Hmm.
that's YouTube, but it's different on TikTok. Definitely on TikTok, there are a lot of top creators
Hmm.
who that is what they started off doing. It's like follow me. Here's what I'm doing today, vlogging my life. Like just
Hmm.
like
Hmm.
Monet, for example, we were talking about. That's what she was doing. Like kind of get ready with me. Like it wasn't
Yeah.
really discoverable
Just
content,
snippets, because you're not
but
having to
because of the
invest
way
a
that the
whole lot of
TikTok,
time if you're watching those TikToks. You're just investing a minute or two.
yeah, it's just a different. It's a whole different. It's a whole different platform. The way that the videos are shorter plays a big role. The way that the algorithm works and just like serves out random things to you that you didn't even know you would have been interested in. You weren't searching for it, but it just popped up on your For You page, and now you're like, oh wait, actually this person's life is kind of interesting, and people are able to kind of like
Hmm.
blow up off of
Hmm.
that on TikTok, but I don't really see
Yeah.
that happening
And
on YouTube.
also, I think there's TikTok and YouTube are becoming a little bit more equal as far as earning potential because the brands are working with TikTokers, and that's where, like you say, the majority of the income comes from. Creator fun, yes, cool and everything, but it's not exactly equal to YouTube because it's ads, and you're running ads on a 1 minute video or between 1 minute videos, and you're running ads on a 30 or 40 20, 30, or 40 minute video on YouTube. So, but do you ever think that you would give up YouTube and just like totally go over to the TikTok side? Notwithstanding what may or may not be going on with TikTok. Let's just keep that off the table. But,
Yeah, I mean, I don't. I am a big proponent of don't put all your eggs in one basket because you never know. Perfect example with TikTok. They're threatening to ban TikTok every 4 weeks. And so what would I do if I only had TikTok going for me and then all of a sudden it gets banned? Now I'm SOL. So I don't think it's ever a good idea to do that. I like knowing that I have YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, Pinterest, blog posts. I wish I had my podcast going more, but like I like knowing that I have these different options in case anything happens to one of the platforms, or if my content just starts flopping on one platform or whatever. At least I know I have the other platforms. I don't think I would ever fully leave YouTube just to do TikTok. I like having both going.
Well, what is your favorite part about being a content creator and why?
The creative freedom. I know if there are other creative jobs in the world, but a lot of them you're like working for somebody else. You know what I mean? You're doing something creative, but to help somebody else's creative vision come to life. I like the fact that I work for myself in that way, and it's Raven Elyse TV, and it's what I want it to be overall, and being able to express myself and have that control.
Yeah.
As a Virgo.
I mean, I think I don't know how much you can appreciate the freedom that you have, because actually you've not worked very much.
I never had
a real job. A real job. You never had a real job.
A big girl job. I've worked retail, little jobs like that, but a career, big girl job, I've never. So
can you really appreciate
this all I know.
Situation?
I can appreciate it because I see other people. I can see other people's experience, and I hear their complaints, and I feel for them, and I see how my situation is different from theirs.
So what's the one thing about being a content creator that most people might not know or understand?
That people don't know or understand? I feel like years ago it was a very misunderstood, like everything about it was misunderstood and people didn't know how it worked at all or what it really entailed. Nowadays I feel like people get it for the most part, but if I had to say something that people still currently don't know, for me I think it's probably relating to working with brands and what really all goes into that. Just like the true business, like admin, sitting at the computer, emails back and forth, meetings and phone calls and briefs and PDFs and spreadsheets,
deliverables and talking points and do's and don'ts.
Like, people always say like, oh, well, you don't really work like a 9-to-5 job, so you have all. It's like, no, but we as a team, like we sit down in an office and work for hours a week. Like I have multiple full-time salaried employees who really be working. We're not just always like playing on camera or whatever. And it's not just filming and editing, because that's what people think of. It's like, oh yeah, you work really hard because you're always filming and editing. It's not at all just filming and editing. There's so much else that goes into it, so much time that goes into it on these different behind the scenes aspects. And I don't think people realize the depths.
I agree with that. I agree with that. But it is very rewarding for me. I am not the creative, but I like working behind the scenes and I like helping others work on their content creation careers. So it's a lot of fun. It's work. It's hard work, but it's a lot of fun. Anyway, that's all I have today. Thanks for taking time out of your busy schedule to be on my podcast. I can't wait to see what the people think. And I'm going to have you on for a follow-up, because I notice that's what all the other podcasters are doing. They're like, oh, this is your second time on my show. This is your third time on my show. You're going to be back on here later on. Okay?
Okay. You know where to find